I will try to say a few words about this. First, couple of words about the concept of emotional intelligence. This concept was developed last century in the 80s after the famous marshmallow experiment, when the little children were tortured by being given one marshmallow and on the condition that they would get two if they wait for indefinite amount of time, 20 minutes or something. You know, for a little kid of 4 years old to wait until he eats a marshmallow in front of him, it's a torture. And some of the kids, they successfully underwent this torture and got 2 marshmallows. And most of them, of course, ate it right away without waiting for the second. So, and 14 years later, all these little kids who were tested in this experiment were checked. And the amazing results were shown that those who passed the test, marshmallow test, and didn't eat it right away and waited when they got the second one, they succeeded in all areas of life much more than those who ate it immediately. So that showed that there is some sort of mechanism within our brain or within our mind which actually is crucial for our overall success in life. And this mechanism or this ability, this function in our mind was called emotional intelligence, as opposed to intelligence, what abstract intelligence, the intelligence which was known as intelligence before. So basically, the idea of this emotional intelligence, even though there is very detailed description of emotional intelligence, but it's basically 2 components are most important. Self-awareness, the awareness of what is going on in your mind, what is going on in your intelligence, what the impulses are there, and ability to control these emotional impulses. These 2 components are the most crucial for this function of our consciousness or for this function of our mind. And since then, you know, books, best-selling books were written about this emotional intelligence, how it is important, and how to develop this emotional intelligence. This is a very brief description of this phenomenon. But because the topic is emotional intelligence through spirituality, it's actually very interesting that this relatively new concept and revolutionary concept, which is quite popular among scientists and psychologists, has a very long history in reality, because Krishna described this emotional intelligence concept in Bhagavad Gita. As Srila Prabhupada said, that everything else, everything is there in Bhagavad Gita. Whatever you get, whatever ideas you get in some other books are all already there in Bhagavad Gita, and there are some additional ideas which are not anywhere else. In this short little book, these ideas are there, and it's not a false claim. It's not a claim of a religious fanatic. It's not a claim of some, you know, sectarian sect member who is, you know, trying to ascribe everything which is everywhere else to his own tradition. It's really there because in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, at the end of the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains the hierarchical order of our structures. He says that body is there, Over the body are the senses. Over the senses, controlling the senses is the mind. Controlling the mind is the intelligence, and over the intelligence is the soul. So he gives this few levels of hierarchy. The next one is supposed to control the lower one. The body is supposed to be controlled by the senses are supposed to be controlled by the mind, which is called in Sanskrit manas. And the concept of mind in Sanskrit, it's an emotional component of our psyche. And basically there are two emotions which are the extremes. Something I love, something I'm attached to, and something I don't like. I hate it. So between these two extremes, there are so many other emotions there. But these are two basic emotions, and the mind is actually this component which says, this I like, this I don't like. This is very good, this I want to have more and more and more, and this I don't like, and this I want to avoid, this I hate as much as possible, so I don't want it to have anything to do with this. So this is the mind. The function of the mind is exactly this, liking and disliking. This I want, this I don't want. And Krishna says that in reality, this mind should be controlled by intelligence. Krishna says that there are two levels of our mind. One is emotional mind, which is the lower kind of mind, which is the mind not capable of bringing us to the ultimate success. And there is the higher mind or intelligence, buddhi in Sanskrit, manas and buddhi, which is supposed to control the lower emotional mind. And that's the normal thing, and over this is the soul, the source of consciousness. And ultimately, the source of consciousness has to be in control of all this system. This whole system is actually given to the soul to fulfill soul's desire, because the desire is ultimately coming from the soul. And Krishna explains this, but unfortunately, which is the case in many of us, the system described in this way in Bhagavad Gita doesn't work always the way it is supposed to work. We know that oftentimes our senses, which are very powerful, they overpower our mind. And oftentimes, most of the times, our mind, which is very powerful, the mind which says, this I like, this I don't like, overpowers our intelligence. In reality, intelligence has to say, this is good for you, no matter whether you like it or not. Get up early in the morning, nobody likes, but it's good. Taking cold shower, I don't like it. I'm the first one to say that I don't like it. But the intelligence is telling you, this is good for you. This is, in a long run, this is better than just to, be sleepy after the hot shower. So, and so many other things which we may like, which the senses like, which the mind likes and prefers, but they're not actually good or helpful or useful or healthy. In reality, and we know it in our day-to-day life, our intelligence is serving the mind. Emotional mind says, I like this and I don't like this. And the intelligence says, okay, you like this, you don't like this. I will explain why what you like is good for you. Like if you want to eat meat, you can just write in Google why meat is good. And the Google will give you so many solid reasons why meat is the best diet ever. And this is exactly what intelligence in a normal quote-unquote condition does. He only justifies what our mind wants. In reality, even though we proudly say that we are Homo sapiens, which is supposed to be the intelligent human being, in reality we are Homo emoticus. We are governed mostly by our emotions. Emotions are very powerful, and intelligence is serving to justify our emotions, nothing else. And if you want to justify any emotions, the intelligence is there. It's just like a good lawyer. Whatever case you need to defend, the good lawyer will do it. No problem. He will find the proper justification of this, and he will give you all reasons why you should do what you want to do and why you should not do what you don't want to do. Whereas again, the proper function of the intelligence is to know better. Is not to be the slave of our emotional mind, of our likings and dislikings, which are coming from the past life. Actually, we are coming in this life with this set of likings and dislikings. And if we just follow these impulses, these impetuses, which are there in the mind, we're only just going round and round and round in this circle of samsara. We're only more or less repeating the same experiences which is already there. Nothing new will come to us. Actually, the developed intelligence is given to us to give some new quality to our life, to change this vicious circle of karma. And therefore, theoretically, at least theoretically, I mean, not in practical life, but theoretically, the intelligence is stronger. And it can be stronger. So the question is how to make the intelligence stronger than the mind. How strong the mind, we all know. We all know how strong all these impetuses, all these impulses which are there, which pushes us in this direction and that direction. And if you take the chart, for example, the chart, the horoscope, your birth chart, the good astrology will tell you this is the very strong force in your life. Basically, the chart is a symbolic representation of your mind. For example, if Mars is a very powerful planet in your chart, then you will be a very aggressive person. You will have very strong force of anger, which you will be driven by in your mind. And you will behave in such a way. Whether it's good for you or not is another question. Usually it's not. Usually it's not helpful for you to advance in life. It's not good in your relationship if you're a very angry person. But still you cannot do anything because this force is there. But still you can do something. Even though you cannot do anything, you still can do something. But only if your intelligence is very strong. If the intelligence takes the rein and governs your mind. Actually, this metaphor is there. It's described in Bhagavad Gita in the purport. Originally, it's coming from Upanishads, from Katha Upanishad, where it is said that the soul is like a traveler. And this body is like a chariot. And this chariot is yoked by 5 horses. 5 horses are there. And these 5 horses are our 5 senses. The ear, the eyes, the nose, and so on and so forth. 5 senses which we have. And the mind, this manas, is the reins of these horses. And the intelligence, buddhi, is the chariot driver. And the soul is sitting there. And if you have strong intelligence, then the strong intelligence will direct your chariot to the proper destination. You will achieve success, whatever success you like. Actually, we are not talking now about spirituality as such. Even if you have some material goals, you have to have strong intelligence. Because if you don't have strong intelligence, you will not reach your destination. Because you will be derailed. The completely uncontrolled horses, your senses will just drive you to the ditch, and you will be there. You will fall into this ditch, and your mind will following the horses, and your intelligence will say, "What can I do? They're too strong." So basically, and that's exactly what is said in this concept of emotional intelligence. If you want to achieve success in any area of life, no matter which area you take, you have to have this strong intelligence. And by intelligence, when Krishna explains this buddhi intelligence, he means emotional intelligence. Because this other concept of intelligence, which is measured by your IQ, your ability of, to do some abstract thinking or whatever, it's not really intelligence. The intelligence, the God-given intelligence, which is the main function of our psyche, is given to us to drive us to a certain destination. This whole system is given to us because we have a purpose to achieve. We have the goal to achieve and the purpose to fulfill in this life, which is actually, in the ultimate sense, is a spiritual purpose. We are spiritual beings, and we're supposed to realize our spiritual nature. And the mind is the main enemy because it's uncontrolled. The uncontrolled mind, the mind which is not controlled by this emotional intelligence or intelligence, is the main enemy, because it's just taking us into another direction. It's just basically bringing about degradation in our life, because we're just slaves of these impetuses which are there from karma. So this concept is there, as I said. There's nothing new in this emotional intelligence. This, catchy phrase is explained long ago, and the wise people of the past, people of the Vedic culture, they knew very well that we have to develop intelligence. The question is how. At this moment of time, I'm supposed to stop and say, "Please pay me money," and then I will explain to you how. Because this is how it works in a normal world. But I will not ask for this. Yeah, I will give the honest deal. So, actually, the whole Bhagavad Gita is about this, how to develop this emotional intelligence, which is the most important mission in our life. Again, if we want to be successful, we have to develop this, and we have to know about this. And Bhagavad Gita is about this. It's teaching. The main teaching of Bhagavad Gita is how to develop buddhi, or intelligence. In this understanding, in this concept. Not again intelligence as some, armchair, thinking ability. I'm just thinking and I'm speculating and I'm a great philosopher and PhD and whatnot. No, this is not intelligence. The intelligence is exactly the ability to know what is good, what is bad. What is good for me in the ultimate sense, not in the immediate sense. The ability to distinguish between the immediate benefit or immediate gratification which I may get from this or that activity, and the ultimate benefit which I will get if I avoid this immediate gratification, which always is in conflict. This immediate gratification is always in conflict with the ultimate benefit. It is in the same Upanishad, in Katha Upanishad, there is this tension between Shreyas and Preyas. Preyas is something immediately pleasing to your senses, and Shreyas is ultimately beneficial to you. So this tension is there, and that's graphically is described in this marshmallow experiment. The gratification is just one marshmallow. The ultimate benefit is 2 marshmallows. symbolically. But the idea is the same. If you fall for it immediately, you'll get something insignificant. And if you wait a little bit, if you are capable of controlling yourself, then you get greater benefit at the end. So, and that's, again, is the main purpose of Bhagavad Gita, is to explain how to do it. Therefore, the topic of my talk, which is supposed to end now, maybe I should ask for money. Anyway, so the main point of the topic which is given is very appropriate, because it's actually spirituality which puts the whole hierarchical system of our existence, of our being, in proper order. If we understand who we are, if we really understand that I'm spirit soul, which is not really dependent, not really not dependent, but which is the body is not all in all. That my life is not finished with the death of this body. That there is a higher purpose in life. That ultimately I have to realize my spiritual nature, and by realizing my spiritual nature, I will from this vicious circle of death, birth and death. I don't have to, undergo this, this suffering, this pain of dying, the pain of getting old, the pain of diseases. Because when people, they identify with the body, this is such a drag. This is such a burden. Actually, Badrinarayan Maharaj once told a beautiful story, which probably took place in the Ego temple, when two black ladies came to Sunday feast program, and somebody on Vyasasana was saying, "You're not this body," and one big black lady whispered to another big black lady, "Did you hear this? Such a relief." The very notion that you're not this body already gives you relief. Even if you don't realize this, it's already huge relief. That I don't have to be so humiliatingly dependent on the pains and sufferings of this body, because I'm transcendental to this. I'm beyond this. So if you understand this, at least theoretically, at least on the level of your intelligence, then the intelligence, by this understanding, by this very concept, becomes strong, becomes stronger. This is how to fortify your intelligence through spirituality, because actually the power which either our intelligence or our mind or our senses get, all power is coming from the soul. The soul is the source of all power which we have in our life. And not only this is, again, this may sound very theoretical, but there is a very practical hint in Bhagavad Gita itself. If you really want to strengthen your intelligence, you have to be in contact with the higher intelligence. And higher intelligence is actually explained, or the higher intelligence, Bhagavad Gita itself is the manifestation of higher intelligence. The higher intelligence is speaking with us. Krishna is speaking with Arjuna, but actually he is speaking with us. The higher intelligence, who is God himself, who is Krishna, in Bhagavad Gita, is speaking with us, and when we are in contact with the higher intelligence, in constant contact with the higher intelligence, our little tiny material intelligence or emotional intelligence becomes strengthened by this contact. Because this all-powerful higher intelligence is very powerful. And if you really understand the logic of Bhagavad Gita, actually this is, Badrinarayan Maharaj mentioned a little bit about my spiritual journey, And even though KGB was instrumental in one sense, but it was not the main force in my spiritual life, because otherwise I would become a KGB man myself. But I didn't. I became a devotee only because I understood the idea of Bhagavad Gita, and I was so mesmerized how beautiful this concept described in Bhagavad Gita and how rational it is. Because before that, and we're often under this impression that religion is supposed to be irrational. Religion is just you believe. What you believe, it doesn't matter, just believe. And if you believe, you're saved. And if you don't believe, you're doomed. This very strange concept is somewhere there in some traditions. But when I first read Bhagavad Gita, I was completely enamored by the very rational description or presentation of completely irrational things. Krishna manages to give you such a rational and intelligent description of all the phenomena in life, then you get the practical instruments of how to live this life in a very productive and satisfying way. How to become happy just by knowing this. So the main hint, and there are so many other things which can be said, like chanting mantras, because what is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is nothing but the ability to observe yourself. And to observe yourself, to be the observer, to really understand what is going on in your mind, what are the impulses, because this is the only possibility to control the impulses. If you want to control the impulses, you have to be outside of these impulses. If you are only this, energy which is there in the mind, emotional energy, you cannot control it. You have to go outside of it. You have to observe it. So this ability to observe, the best way to develop this ability to observe what is going on in your mind, in your intelligence and everything, is just to chant mantra. Because mantra gives you this platform from which you can observe, from which you can develop, your intelligence. So many things can be said about the ways of developing intelligence, and it's there in Bhagavad Gita itself. If you read Bhagavad Gita carefully, so many hints are there. But the main and most important point, how to develop the emotional intelligence through spirituality, is to be in contact with the higher intelligence, is to take guidance of the higher intelligence. And therefore, very beautifully in this metaphor of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is the chariot driver of Arjuna. Arjuna, in this metaphor which I explained before, Arjuna is the spirit soul. The driver is, or the chariot is our body, the horses are the senses. But who is supposed to be our driver? Krishna is supposed to be our driver. Because he is the real manifestation of real intelligence, which can bring us to the highest possible destination and bring about the highest possible success in life. If we make Krishna our driver, actually Krishna is the emotional intelligence. This is my contribution to this emotional intelligence theory. Please tell Mr. Goldman that there is something important which he missed in his book, Emotional Intelligence. So Krishna is the manifestation of the highest manifestation of emotional intelligence, and if you want to develop it, you have all the facilities for this. It's just a question of reading Bhagavad Gita and living Bhagavad Gita, following Bhagavad Gita, following the commands of this highest possible emotional intelligence described in the verses of Bhagavad Gita. So, thank you very much. I am done.
What we can do is it takes a few moments to set up the dinner, and you can ask them questions while we're setting up, and then once we're set up, you can get your plate and come back. I don't know what, you leave late tonight, early tomorrow morning, so I don't wanna put you, keep you up too late. But the point is, if you have questions, you can ask them now when we're set up. When we're set up, we'll blow the whistle, you can all charge out there, get your plates, and then you can come back and follow up with more questions. Is that okay? So we're gonna start rolling, getting things set up.
And if you don't take it now and wait a little bit until the questions are finished, you will get much more satisfaction.
Maharaj, if we wait, it will be gone.
Too much,
So we're not offering the, delay and display later on. That's not happening.
Which is easier to develop, being a yogi or Krishna prema? And can you explain a yogi and prema?
Again, what was the first part of it? What?
Which is easier to develop, being a yogi or Krishna prema?
Krishna prema is not a cheap thing. It's the highest possible
What is Krishna
achievement.
Prema for first timers?
Krishna prema is love of God, love for Krishna. See, in one sense, yoga is a more difficult process because you have to fulfill so many preconditions. First of all, if you're 80 years old, it's very difficult to do yoga. Or if you are a little kid, or if you're that or this. So there are so many conditions connected with the body. Your body has to be flexible, and ultimately you have to develop very calm mind, and you have to meditate for hours to achieve this. So it's a difficult process in one way, but it's an easy process in another way. Why yoga is so attractive? Because when you're doing yoga, you're totally, completely dependent on yourself. And this is what we like. We like to be in control. And therefore, this yoga process is easy from this point of view because it's something which we are used to do. Yoga is explaining, if you sit like this, then you will get this result, and if you breathe like this, then you will get this result, and this we like very much. Whereas to develop Krishna prema, you have to be completely surrendered to the Lord, and this we don't like, right? And not only this, we have to surrender to Him without any guarantee that we will get something at the end, because everything depends on Him. We're giving control to Him. Bhakti yoga, technically speaking, is very simple. You sit and you chant and you like it, and that's it, and you develop, your consciousness will get purified. It's easy. But there is a trick, because the ultimate condition to gain success in Bhakti yoga is that you surrender to the Lord, you depend on His mercy, and this we don't like. Therefore, people like normal yoga more. But we don't recommend this because, first of all, the achievement of yogi is very meager. Yes, you may achieve some mystic powers, you may achieve some control of the mind, that's good. But it's nothing in comparison with this completely, completely beautiful and powerful emotional state which we call love for God. So we definitely recommend Krishna prema, even though in one sense it's more difficult to achieve. But the process itself is easier. Just come every Thursday here and chant and listen a little bit, and that will be the starting point.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So with emotional, so we always say like chant and be happy, but is it also like okay to be sad and to be like all the other emotions? Like is it part of it, or eventually it's just
No,
happy,
absolutely.
happy, happy?
The happiness, no. The concept of spiritual happiness is not this, plastic happiness, which stereotype typed happiness. It's a very variegated and very deep emotional experience, and sometimes you experience the sadness, but this sadness is actually the manifestation of happiness. The spiritual happiness, the whole spectrum of emotions are there, but they're all happy emotions, even though they may be called sadness. But it's not material sadness. Material sadness is something like depression. You're depressed and you're completely, you have no taste in life. But when you experience the spiritual sadness, so to speak, it elevates you even more. So all the spiritual emotions are there in this sound of the holy name, in Kirtan. And sometimes people cry, sometimes people become elated. Different emotions are there. And crying is a very, very common emotion which we experience during the Kirtan. So don't worry, you will not be deprived of of this emotional, variegatedness.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes.
Thanks for giving this hierarchy of senses, mind, intelligence. So, in this realm of technicalities, where is consciousness? What exactly is consciousness, and where does it fall?
Consciousness is the energy of the soul. You may say consciousness is the energy of the soul. You may say consciousness is the soul proper. Both statements are correct according to Vedic philosophy. The soul is consciousness and the soul has consciousness. Both statements are correct. So, soul is consciousness itself, and it emanates consciousness. This energy of consciousness actually saturates all other levels of our existence. The mind is only functioning because it's saturated by the energy of consciousness, and therefore sometimes we mistake mind with the consciousness. Mind is a machine, but because it works on the energy of consciousness, it sometimes looks like consciousness. Intelligence is again very subtle but still mechanism. It's a program which is there. But it runs on the energy of consciousness. It's like the example which is given in Vedic literature is that sometimes very thin cloud comes to the moon. And this thin cloud, it looks like the thin cloud emanates the light. Actually, cloud doesn't emanate the light. The light is coming from the moon, but it seems like the cloud is emanating the mind. In the same way, the light. In the same way, it seems like our intelligence or our mind, they're conscious, but they're only emanating the light which is coming from the soul. And the soul is the sole source of consciousness, and the only source of consciousness.
Could you share a little bit about the mental health and healing from karma or trauma in relation to mindset because I feel like so many people struggle with mental health in the world today, and how to heal from past hurts or how that relates to karma and healing that. Or the negative thinking.
How long time do you have?
Can we solve world problems?
I mean, it's a long topic. It's a big topic. But to give you some hint how to do it, I mean, it's again possible if you have very clear, if you are very clear about this model which I just presented. You know, the wounds, the traumas are stored in our subconscious mind, and they manifest in our day-to-day life. Sometimes we don't even know why we fear something. You know, all these subconscious fears and anxieties are there because of the traumas which are there. It's funny, recently I just read a story about Napoleon, and he was a very brave, you know, warrior and, you know, very great general, but he was utterly, he was afraid of cats. So in the final battle with Marshal Nelson, and Nelson put 70 cats in front of his army, and that's why Napoleon was defeated, because when he saw cats, he said to his assistant, "You do this and I will go to my home." So because of childhood trauma, this fear which was so strong. So, and he didn't know he didn't read Bhagavad Gita, otherwise he would heal himself from this trauma. But how to use this model to heal yourself, or at least to understand what is the healing process, what the healing process involves, what does it mean? You have so many traumas and problematic experiences which are stored in your subconscious mind. And they're only strong because they're there, stored very deeply in your subconscious mind. Some are from childhood, some are from previous lives. You might have been killed, murdered in your previous life, and this fear is still there. You know, all our phobias are from this previous life experiences. But the intelligence has the nature of the light. It's illuminating. So if you bring somehow or other, and that's what psychoanalysis does. Psychoanalysis brings your samskaras or subliminal impressions which are there stored in your subconsciousness to the light of your consciousness. Through talking with the psychotherapist and so on and so forth, you know, he brings about these things, and he actually shows that they're not such big problems as you think they are. You know, he through this light of rational intelligence, you understand that your subconscious fear, which you think is very strong, is actually there's nothing to fear so much. You know, cat is not such a big problem. You know, it's just it has been made problematic within your mind because it's there. This traumatic experience, these negative emotions are stored there. So if you take these things, this is how psychoanalysis works. You take it out from your subconsciousness and you objectively observe. And basically, if you develop this habit of being the observer, of witness, of, you know, this is called mindfulness or self-awareness or whatever. If you basically develop this habit of introspection and objectively analyzing what is going on in your mind, then all these emotions and traumas, they stop controlling yourself. Because you give the power of your consciousness to your intelligence. Whereas now the power of your consciousness is directed to your subconscious mind. And this subconscious mind is very powerful because it's just, you know, it's more or less sucking all the power of your consciousness. So again, the solution is to strengthen your intelligence, to make your intelligence strong, and to make your intelligence strong is develop the habit to observe what is going on. Objective observance, you know. When you become a little bit distant from all these emotions which are there, and then you objectively see whether these emotions are helpful, whether they are productive or they are destructive. And usually they are destructive, you know. And you can only see this when you distance yourself. And this ability is there. The intelligence is exactly this function which gives you this facility or this ability to objectively look at yourself. So that's how to tackle this particular problem which you raised. You know. But of course, there's much more to be said about this.
I have a question related to the relationship between intelligence and the mind, and it also goes. So it relates to change.
Hold on just for a moment. If you like, you can get up and get a plate. Otherwise, you can wait, and we'll bring them all to you. I think it's probably less, you can, otherwise you slip out the back and walk around if you like. Otherwise, we're bringing plates. So the wheels are turning. That's the basic message. And if you want seconds, you can just slide out and get yourself seconds and come back in.
So my question is relating to changing habits, and also like processing the trauma. I mean, these two are quite different things, but somehow related, because the person who are dealing with the trauma also probably trying to change some habits they don't like about themselves.
Yes.
So I wanted to bring about one thing that you mentioned where you said the mind is the enemy, and that's where I felt a little bit triggered, because if I treat my mind as an enemy and my intelligence as a hierarchy, so this becomes like a wrestling throughout the life, because it's not something totally independent part. It's a very much integral part of me. And many people in therapy they talk about your inner child, that you mentioned about your subconscious mind, and they refer your subconscious mind as inner child. So I feel it's very important to define the relationship between the subconscious mind with intelligence, or whatever name one wants to assign it. So my question, so first thing, this
You
is...
just ask your question, he'll sort it out.
Yeah, so first I want to share my perspective, but my question is, what is your take on to change the habits, like or that and where these what would be the role of intelligence and in the mind?
Yeah.
If somebody's changing habits.
Yeah, we can develop any habit we want. Intelligence is supposed to understand what habit is best for you, and if you understand, if you understand by your intelligence what is best for you, what is the best habit you should have, then by proper training over the period of 30 days, 40 days, or if it's a very complex habit, you may need longer time, but you may develop this habit. But the initial impetus comes from the intelligence. By intelligence, you understand this is good for me. This is good for me to get up early. This is good for me to go to bed earlier, or whatever. Whatever habit you want to develop, you can develop it if you really want. So the intelligence is this deciding factor which says this is good for you. This is what you should be doing, because it will bring the ultimate result. And then by training yourself, you will ultimately like it. When you develop the habit, something which was difficult for you before, when you develop the habit to do it, will become easy and very pleasant. So now to change the habit is painful, but when you develop good habit, it's actually very pleasant to follow this. So intelligence decides which habit you should have, and intelligence helps you to develop this by staying in the course of doing this. But then it becomes the habit of your mind, and your mind will say, yes, I like it. Before, the mind liked something different, something opposite, but then, when you reprogrammed your mind by developing different habits, you like what you didn't like before. So that's what the intelligence is, the programmer. The mind should be programmed in a proper way.
Thank you, Maharaj. Maharaj has a busy schedule, so I think perhaps we should end there. Thank you, Maharaj, for coming.
Okay.
Couple announcements before we end. As always, completely free program. If you like to make any contribution